Hello, hello, good morning, and welcome back. I hope you're all having a fine day after yesterday's big victory, as again, the fourth in a row. The Spurs game is feeling pretty good. We've got potential that by later today we'll be 5 points clear into the Champions League positions, considering top five. Good feelings, good feelings. It was nice that that Spurs game, the more I've thought about it over the next day, I've just been going, just feels so, it felt so casual. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It was such an easy game. Such a calm and relaxed game. I've been thinking about it and just going like, it's not like I'm not excited about it, but like, Whereas City, Arsenal, some of these games were a little different. The drama with Fulham, the Spurs game was so like chill. I don't know. It was one of the first games this season where while watching and when we were sitting at 1-0 up, I was just like relaxed, calm. And it's not that I haven't been excited after winning, but it was almost like just another day. The Spurs are that bad. Spurs are that bad, honestly. They're so bad, but still. There's still some thinking to be done about that, but also I did want to discuss today I did want to discuss today some of the things that some of the stuff about targets, midfielders, center backs, and the plan moving forward, because I certainly think that you've got to consider some of this stuff. Like, you've got to consider some of the, you got to consider some of the stuff. You got to consider some of the things that are happening, some of the resurgence of players, some of the, the way that we're playing. And you do got to factor it in a little bit. I mean, it is different. It is different. And I wanted to talk about that first. I wanted to talk specifically about Bruno and Kobbie first, because I do think you have to look at, it's not about being necessarily reactive, but I think you do have, new evidence, new things happen, you see the way that they're playing, you see certain things that are happening on the pitch, and you go, that should affect your transfer plans. That should affect the way that you're looking to build, the club moving forward. It should matter. So I think it's worth discussing and looking at the midfield plans and what we want to do moving forward within that context. But yeah, we'll get to that. Talk about some center back names, because there's a couple little rumors, etc. And yeah, we play again in just a few days, so we get today to essentially just kind of talk about what could happen, and then we'll be back to talking about the next game tomorrow, West Ham on Monday. Because the game's on Tuesday. So, but yeah, there's an interesting kind of debate. So let me look at some of these questions before we get into this. Baleba's still a baller, having a rough season. Maybe shouldn't start yet, but still very good. We'll talk about that, because it's not necessarily that's the issue in itself. I'm good. I hope you're well. Baleba still needed, just lowering the price tag. Well, that's part of it I want to discuss. Needs spells Spurs relegated for the vibes. Would you take Robbie? No, I still don't think we need. I'm not sure we need a backup striker at this point. I mean, Šeško's getting 20 minutes a game right now at most, and like, he's getting 20 minutes a game at most, and why would we need a backup striker? And if we sign wingers, that's just and when Dorgu's back, we're gonna get a ton of, we have so much forward depth, it's insane. I mean, we've done that discussion a few times recently, not because Broadby hasn't been decent, but like, I just don't think we need to be. I just don't see that as a position we should be going for a lot at this point in time. But let's talk about let's talk about this situation, okay? Yeah, like Mbumo and Cunha are good at 9s. Sheshko's basically our backup 9 right now. Like, I'm not looking for backup 9s at this point. Let's look at the Spurs game first, and I want to talk about Bruno and Mainoo first. And then, because I think it's relevant to, the discussion about what we do in our midfield this summer and the proper thing that we need to do moving forward. And I posed the title, good Lord. So, I posed the title, should Bruno stay? And someone came in and was like, why are you forcing Bruno out again? I'm like, what are you talking about? First of all, let me make a disclaimer here to start today's video. Guys, I don't decide anything about what United do. I don't push for anything for what United do. I have no influence on what United do in the market and with their players, and neither do you, and neither does anybody else, okay? Just so people are clear, all right? Okay, no matter what I say, it's not going to change the decision United are going to make in the market. Okay, but anyway, so I changed it to extend his stay, because seemingly should Bruno stay is a misunderstood question. But it is worth discussing from the standpoint of what is actually probably going to have to happen this summer for Bruno to stay in this team. But I was looking at yesterday's game, right? And one of the things that really, really stood out to me, and I've been thinking about it, someone made this comment, okay? And people can take it however they want. Someone made this comment the other day, and this is somebody I've had a lot of, somebody actually in Discord who, just a user, but they have they were like giga massive anti-Amarim, all that and stuff, right? So just bear in mind this is coming from somebody else, but I thought it was a really interesting comment. They said one thing they really liked, one thing that they said, and it stood out, is that you don't have to credit Amarim for it. It doesn't matter. Bruno playing deeper, he seems to have changed him a little. And I actually agreed with this, because I've been watching Bruno recently and I've been going, as somebody that has criticized things sometimes too much, especially during moments of frustration or when we're losing, as someone who's criticized Bruno too much, I've been going, where's the Hollywood balls? Where's the, risk taking? Where's Bruno dropping deep and taking people's jobs away and doing things that he wasn't doing before? He's not doing that anymore. He's staying in his role, which is a free role, mind you, and playing much, much smarter than he was before. For whatever reason, he is. He's doing really, really well. And it's like, and a lot of the bad habits that he's had, even when he played at a 10 before, I haven't seen these last few games. And it really stood out as well against Spurs, because he's been crashing the box. He's been getting forward. He's been doing so much stuff, but he's still creating chances. He's still scoring goals. He's still doing some flicks and tricks. Don't get me wrong. He's done the Rabonas and things like that. But this is a different Bruno that I've seen in the last few days than I saw before. It is a different Bruno than I've seen previously. A lot of the bad habits are just not there anymore. And I was like, I've had basically no complaints about Bruno in these last few games. Whatever the reason, it doesn't matter to me. I'm not looking for credit. I'm talking about now and moving forward in the future. This person commented that, and I thought that was an interesting comment. And then I was looking at the numbers, because one of the complaints that I had in analyzing games in the past and looking at Bruno's, he was always the guy with the most touches. And don't get me wrong, you obviously do want Bruno to be on the ball a lot, right? He's a creative player. Ideally, Bruno being on the ball a lot means you have the ball, you're in attacking areas, you're doing things, you're doing all of that, right? He had 84 touches yesterday, and he made 61 attempted passes. 84 touches, 61 attempted passes. And one of the big differences is right here. When I looked at this, I thought, oh shit, this is more like it. Casemiro and Kobbie had 195 touches and completed 76 passes, 84 passes. And Lisandro Martinez, I don't know if he had as many, I actually haven't even looked, had 120 touches and completed 109 passes. Unreal numbers, right? Like insane numbers that Lisandro was completing there. And so anyway, I've looked at that and I thought, this is different. This is different. This is growth. This is an improvement. And that's more like it, you know, where you are going back to front and you're progressing the play and controlling the game via the actual midfield, right? And the center backs. Lisandro essentially stepping up as that quarterback, third midfielder, staying deep. Everybody's doing their job. And then Bruno is not having to, or whether it's him not doing it first or him trusting others or whatever the reason, is playing a more disciplined role where he doesn't go off and do everybody else's job. That's massive growth. And on that basis, Bruno is right now probably playing as the best in his position in football right now, right? Just in the real world, if we look at it. I rewatched the game twice. This isn't taking credit away from Bruno. I don't think he was man of the match. I think it would be Harry, Lisandro, Casemiro, or Mainoo, just because they were doing so much more in controlling and running the game. Bruno's goal was absolutely brilliant and stunning. You know what I mean? But it makes you think about, okay, but then it opens up this debate. And this is, I don't have a stance on this at this point in time. And then I want to talk about Kobbie and then midfield targets and all of that. If Bruno wants to leave and the only way he would stay is a new contract, would you do it? Would you do it? Would you extend Bruno's contract to keep it? Where are you rewatching it? I recorded it. It wasn't on Peacock. So when it's on Peacock, I can rewatch it. When it's on cable, it goes into my cloud recordings. And I can rewatch it. Or would you just say he should just stay? No, so you wouldn't extend his contract. You would just say just stay. You would extend his contract. Yes, this game will age like mine. I think the question is wages, right? I think that if I were to ask you a different question, how about this? Because I think it's a mixed bag here. Some yes, some no. Okay. If Bruno were to extend his contract, but on ordinary wages, like in the 150 to 200 bracket, would you extend his contract? Because I think the question becomes, if you wanted to do it at, if it was like, well, you can only extend it on 300,000, that's a different question to extending the contract for, to keep him on genuine, like ordinary wages for a couple of years to stay in the team. Then I think more people would say yes, right? And I think that I would as well. If you could keep him on wages that reflect, age or maybe in the future diminished profile, then you would take him. But otherwise, I think you wouldn't want to do like a huge kind of pay bump or something like that. But I don't know. It's an interesting debate. It's an interesting question, to be honest. You'd extend him on a lower contract. Yeah. That's probably where I would lean on that too. But it's just an interesting debate. And I think that maybe the hope for United, which is what they're at. Okay, so let's switch over to info. The hope for United right now, I think, based on everything I've heard, is that Bruno will stay on his current deal this summer. Will stay at least one more season. They have an option to extend after that, I believe, one more season. And then they could discuss it at that point in time based on what happens this year. If we're ultra competitive, if what happens this year, I mean next year, 2026, 2027 season, and make that decision later. Because I think that it's probably the right time to decide a bit further next year. And maybe he will have a different perspective next year too, you know? Maybe he'll be looking at it like, wow, this team's competing for leagues. Even if I'm not the main man, I want to stay here the next 5 years and retire as a United legend, and even as I fade into the background. And that would be a different perspective. You know what I mean? Like, I think that it is the right plan and what United want right now to keep him at least into next season on his current contract. And then we can make a better decision at that point in time. Because if we're competitive, he should stay. He should stay, right? Right? If we're competitive, he should stay. He should keep going. All of that. So I think that would be probably I think that's probably the hope within the club, right? That's what we will do. That he'll stay one more season. We're in Champions League. We're rebuilding the team. We're making title pushes. We're pushing towards becoming an incredible club. And maybe at that point, Bruno goes, I want to be here and retire as a United legend. I'll be happy to stay and fade, over the length of my career and fade into more of a rotational option and then a mentorship role. I think that would be fair. I think that would be probably like the ideal situation for the club, for Bruno, for the fans, for everything. So hopefully something like that happens. Can't we lose him on a free if he stays one more season? I believe he has they have a +1 trigger either way. I believe they have a +1 trigger right now. So I don't think we can lose him on a free either way. And look, obviously this is where you have to say it has changed, because yes, you're not signing players for managers and you're not doing things like that, but obviously playing in a system the way that we're playing now, where him and Kobbie are not in these competing positions and roles exactly, then it's different. They're different positions, different jobs, different roles, more usefulness. If we can build the team, the pivot to be top level, then Bruno can stay consistently playing in a more free, more attacking role that doesn't hurt his, ability. One that doesn't require as much of the defensive work. He can age well. It just remains to be seen. Obviously, it's up to Bruno, but I think the club are hopeful that with the form we're showing now and that we're on our way to Champions League positions, and maybe we could even have it secured by like April, that Bruno will give us that answer before the World Cup, and we won't have to question whether he's leaving or not. But we do need that answer, We do need that answer. We do need to know, because he's such an important part of the team, even more so now going back to this. And like I said, he's showing more completeness in his play now, and almost like he's showing more completeness in his play now by doing less, which is really, really interesting as well. That is really, really interesting as well. So it's encouraging, and it makes me very hopeful. I was looking at it like this. If you look at like the heat map of things, I was saying, look, Bruno's playing as basically our most forward player. If you look at it, like this is Mbeumo, and yeah, Bruno on occasion will drop out into different places, but like this was Mbeumo and this was Bruno yesterday. Like Bruno's playing as basically our most forward player. Look at where like the action is, and obviously again he still does other things, but when we're in the attacking areas, look at where most of Mbeumo's like passes are compared to Bruno's. You know, you look at the dribbles, the touches. Like he's playing as a forward in large stretches of the game, and I think that's that's very good. But it's not just as a 10. He's doing more than he's done in the past as a 10 by doing less. By not, maybe when he first arrived, and we had like Pogba and the ball was getting forward. One of the things that happened last season that certainly hurt us was when Lisandro Martinez got injured, right? Because even under Amorim, he was playing forward. When Lisandro got injured, he moved deep. And a huge part of the reasoning for that was at least explained, is that, of course, when Lisandro Martinez is playing, he helps us get up the pitch so much more. And it's true. And if we look at the last few games, that is true. Lisandro Martinez on the ball, his progressions, things like that. He's one of the most talented on-ball center backs in football. Maybe the best on-ball center back in football. The things he can do with the ball, all of that. And so the ball gets forward a lot better, so Bruno doesn't come deep. I think it also helps massively having a partnership of Casemiro and Mainoo behind him that can also do things. But Lisandro is a game changer for the way that we progress the ball up the pitch, the way that we move. And when we lost him last season, that was a huge, huge blow to a lot of the things we were trying to do, because he was actually in really good form. He had that amazing thing. He had that goal against Liverpool, goal against City, or pass against City. He had that great goal against Fulham, breaking down their low block. Like he was attacking, he was getting forward, but he was also helping us progress up the pitch. And we really, really hurt when he was off. And we still will need that, certainly, under any circumstances. So I think with the Bruno thing, United would like him to stay next season. And hopefully then we can have a new discussion depending on where we're at in terms of his future and where we're at as a club. For this season, I think the club are going to hope we can convince Bruno, hey, just tell us you're going to stay before summer so we don't have to worry about it, and we can go rebuild the rest of the team. And we're going to be in Champions League. We're going to be competitive. And our promises to you will be kept when you signed that new deal last summer, 2024, not last, but the previous one, that we're building a competitive team for title challenging. And you wouldn't have believed it last year. This year, it's looking pretty good. It's looking like we could do something next year. You know what I mean? And he's looking pretty good. Let's talk then about so that's the situation with Bruno, and I think that's worth discussing. Let's see. Let's talk about Kobbie and Baleba now, because I gotta say, man, like, fully, like, if Ruben Amorim was seeing what we're seeing on the pitch from Kobbie Mainoo in training, Ian Wright said it's embarrassing, and it is. It's very embarrassing, and it's embarrassing for me. I'm embarrassed that I would have backed a manager who looked at or supported, either way, a manager if he was seeing that in training and didn't see the value in it. Like what we're seeing on the pitch, if Amorim was seeing that in training and wasn't selecting him, it's insane. Because I gotta say, like, I wanted Kobbie to play more than he was. No doubt about that. You know, I saw when he came on against Bournemouth and some of his appearances that, okay, he's got to play. He's got to play. But Kobbie showing things, and I mean this quite seriously as a full-on compliment. Kobbie is showing things this season I don't think he showed under Ten Hag even. I don't think he showed when he broke through. Some of the passing range he's been showing, some of the other things he's been showing in a different light. I don't think he was even this good. I don't think he was even this good under Ten Hag. And I mean that seriously. Like, some people may tell you they saw the potential, and that's fine. They're probably right. What I saw from Kobbie when he broke in and under Ten Hag was a very good player. And there was a lot of very good moments. But what I've seen in the last few games from Kobbie is way more than that. Way more than what I saw under Ten Hag. And I say under Ten Hag not as a comment on Ten Hag. I'm just talking to separate the time span. Like when he broke into the team and was playing, it wasn't this good. What we've seen the last few games, it wasn't this good. It was there was bigger skill sets that he's having that I have never seen him do. Even at the youth level, I never saw the passing range he's showing now. The switch, the long pass, the ball out wide. The second goal comes from, we know we can evade the pressure and do that, but then to smash it out wide up to Ahmad on the wing, that adding that range to his game, that quickness to his game, all of that, I've never seen that. I've never seen that before. And people could tell me they have. Fair enough, man. I've never seen Kobbie with that passing range before. I've just never seen it. And I'm like, holy shit, man. But if he's been able to do this in training, and that's been there, then I really, really don't understand why he wasn't playing. Because people can clip whatever little clips they want or something like that. But I was asking for Kobbie to play for like the last 2 months regularly, saying, I want him to play, I want him to play. He needs to play more. He should be playing more. I was really not happy with Bruno deep in that midfield. And I'm just going, but I didn't think he had that passing range. And I thought that was the reason he wasn't playing more than the athleticism, because I don't see that Casemiro and Bruno are particularly athletic these days either. So I figured, all right, it must be the passing range then, that we doing those switches, those balls out wide, those things like that. But I don't know, man. I don't get it. When I'm looking at it now, I just like he was blowing my mind yesterday, and and I saw it. I think it was first against Arsenal that he was hitting switches. It was Arsenal, or that was Rashford that made that switch in the final, for what it's worth. But he hitting these long passes he's added to his games, these switch out wide. It's complete. It's complete. Like, genuinely, he's turning into the complete player in that respect, because you don't have to be an absolute road runner, and to be an athlete. But generally speaking, you can't just be a dribbler. And I'll mention this as my concern with Carlos Baleba right now. You can't just be a dribbler in football, in the midfield. Because if you're a top athlete and a dribbler, that's fine, because you can get up, you can get back. Adding passing range into the game, being able to hit longer passes, switches, the different things, all of that gives you so much more utility in any system, in any team, in that respect. And I just have to say, it must have been personal by the end, because there's no way anyone was seeing that in training and saying, can't get into my midfield. Can't get into my midfield. There's just no way. It had to be personal by the end of it, and I've said a few times, I think it probably was by the end. But I was honestly shocked, and yeah, it is what it is, man. But it does But it does speak to the point of, like, when I look at Carlos Baleba right now, I understand that Carlos Baleba has good traits and things. But right now, when I'm looking at, and let's talk about midfield, and I'll run through a bunch of the targets. Carlos Baleba right now, it's not that he doesn't have good traits, but he hasn't been good. And I think it's like, it's very dangerous to buy players on purely on traits when you have evidence in front of your eyes about how they're playing football. And when I look at Baleba, I look at what are probably his best traits, and I think he's kind of just a worse Kobbie with what I'm seeing. Like, at best, he can dribble, he can get around, he can win duels. His passing has been awful this season from Baleba. Yes, he's a bit more athletic, but I don't see the point. Like, yes, you could still partner Baleba with Kobbie, but the price is so much mobile. Yes, he's more mobile. Yes, he's more athletic, but yes, he's still a good defensive dueler and all of that. But I don't know, man. I look at the price and I go, certainly, if you were to buy, let's say you bought Elliot Anderson. Baleba wouldn't even touch getting in over Kobbie if you look at how they're playing right now. Not even close. Not even a little bit. It would be Anderson and Kobbie. And that would be what you get. So Baleba would still have value, but I'm looking at him more as a good squad player, a good potential player, a good player that could grow into something more, but isn't there yet. And the problem is the price. It's not whether or not we should sign Baleba, because I still see some good things with him. I still see good things with him, but it's about the price. We can't pay $70 million for a guy who's going to be benched by Kobbie Mainoo easily. We just can't. And he's not good enough to be a starting. I don't think he's good enough to be a starting 6 in our team. And that's kind of the problem. Like, he could be great in the future. He still could be great in the future, but the price is crazy. If you're talking 40 million, 50 million, it's good. I would still do it because there is a lot of potential there. You know, like some people talked about Patrick Dorgu. I see him kind of similarly. Sort of a raw player with a lot of materials, but not really, that weren't really doing it. You know what I mean? And I think Dorgu was a fair price in that respect. If I look at Baleba, you can't pay 70. We can't afford that. We've got other things that we've got to do. You know, you could add add-ons and things like that in there. Yes, he's totally an upgrade on Ugarte. And then you could say, good, sell Ugarte, bring Baleba in, then bring Anderson, and that works. But you still don't want to pay 70 million. That still doesn't make any sense. It still doesn't make sense to do that. So I think they've got to bring that price significantly down to a more reasonable level to get done. And I think, you know, he would like to join us, and I think he's got to push for it. And I think that there's risk involved with this deal, and the price just has to be good. The price just has to be good. It just has to. What do you think of? Well, and this is a point. This is a point, Prompt. What do you think of Sanderberg? I really, really like Sanderberg. It was really funny because I muted somebody the other day for coming in immediately. I think it was after the Fulham game and saying, "You told us we shouldn't get Sanderberg and this and that last summer, and look at how good he is." And I said, "Well, hold on a second.
Our best players this season are most of the ones we're expecting to leave. Case.
We'll talk about that in one moment, Run. I'll answer your question in 1 second after the Sanderberger thing. I made a video on Sanderberg when we were looking at him as an alternative to Ugarte, which Ugarte has been a flop. I'm not claiming my ball knowledge here, but Sanderberg is a good player. I was really, really happy with the idea of us signing Sanderberg. And I look at him and I go, well, would I rather pay, I don't know what he would cost, but I'd rather have Sanderberg in my team than Baleba today. Wouldn't you? Wouldn't you rather, like, if you had to choose today, who would you rather have in your team as a squad option? I'd rather have Berg in my team. He's better right now. He's playing better right now. He's doing well right now. Now, I don't know that he's obtainable. Fulham might make him unsellable. They might say 60, 70, 80, 90 million. But he is better than Baleba right now. Right now. He is better than Baleba right now. I'm not saying he's going to be better, but right now I'd rather have him in my team. Today. In terms of how he's playing. And again, yeah, he's a sitting 6. He's got better passing range. He's more of a dribbler, all of that. I'm not saying in the future that Baleba wouldn't necessarily or couldn't be a better player or has a higher ceiling or whatever you'd want to call it. You know what I mean? But I'd be looking at Berg and saying, well, yeah, if I could get him for 40, I'd rather get him than Baleba for 70 today. So it's an interesting question because we're talking about squad options. Because we're talking about squad options right now. You know what I mean? Because I just don't think Baleba's good enough right now to be our starting 6. So if I'm looking at it on a squad basis, I'd rather pay less for Berg than a lot for Baleba. But it's just kind of whatever. But Baleba could be that guy in the future. Now, to answer the question there, Ron, are you concerned that our best players this season are the ones we're expecting to leave? Cass, Harry Maguire, and Bruno. I don't think they're our best players this season, to be fair. Some of them have had a resurgence recently, but Mbumo, Ahmad, Mainoo, right now, obviously, Luke Shaw, Senna Lamans. Like, we have had a lot of good performers this season. I don't think those are necessarily our best players. All season, especially. Like, the last few games, there's been a bit of a resurgence. Also, you said Harry and Maguire. There's only one. Harry Maguire's one guy. But, look, I think Casemiro's been good, but we're obviously going to replace him. And I think that I think Bruno's going to end up staying personally at this point. I'm leaning that way. If we're in Champions League, I don't see why he would leave. I mostly worry about losing Maguire, and I do want to talk about center backs a little bit later. That's the player I actually worry about losing the most because I do think we'd be in a bad place if we don't replace him. Can you rank who you would buy out of Elliot Anderson, Wharton, Tonali, Berg, Baleba, and Andre Gomez? Anderson would be number 1. I would say Tonali 2 from a pure player perspective, but he's got weird things. Like, if I'm not considering price, Anderson, Tonali, Wharton, Baleba, Berg, Andre Gomez, in that order. I think Tonali is really, really good. So I actually think Tonali is a really good footballer. I don't think he's been bad this season. You talking Andre? Like, you're probably not talking Gomez. You're talking just Andre, right? At Wolves. That's who I understood. I think you're talking about Andre, just in general. But it's mostly about. But Tonali have got attitude issues and such. I don't know. There's reasons I wouldn't sign Tonali in that sense. Like, from a pure football standpoint, I think he's really good. From a off the pitch and attitude standpoint, I probably avoid him like the plague, and I just wouldn't sign him at all. So it's a little hard to it's a little hard to rank and look at them in that front.
People need to watch Mamadou Sangare.
There's been a lot
player.
of hype over Sangare. A lot of people been talking about him. I watch him. But yeah, look, there's other options. There's other options to talk about, right, in the midfield. And I guess what I'm saying on the Baleba debate is that should we not think about other alternatives if we're looking at, like, let's say we could pull off Elliot Anderson, who's clearly our top target, and we do get him. And we're more talking about our second midfielder. I don't think I would pay 70 million for Baleba for our second midfielder. Here's other names, okay, that we've looked at and that we've considered. Buwadi, João Gomez, Adam Wharton, Pablo Barrios, Noah Sadiki, Keith Smith, Yarmouk, Stiller, and Mateus Fernandes. Okay, there's 9 other names I can give you that United have at least looked at, considered, or scouted. And I'm going, for your second midfielder, come on, I think there's better cost for value there if Baleba's 70 million. Don't you think? Don't you think there's Mateus? Yeah, sorry. Don't you think there's better cost per value on that list? Don't you think there's potentially better cost per value on that list? Don't you think going and getting like a Buwadi for 40 million is good, or a Sadiki for 40 million, or a Mateus Fernandes for 40 million is good? Like, they're going to get relegated, like release clause. Like, don't you think that there are better options from a cost perspective than Baleba at 70? That's all I'm saying. There's a lot of options. Why are we saving? No. It's not just about saving money, Issa, though. It's about like, there's a risk factor with Baleba because he's not playing well right now. And while there's an upside with Baleba that I do agree. I'm not changed my perspective on the idea. I see a lot of upside potential with Baleba, but there is risk. But there is a lot of risk, you know what I mean? And I think that's the point in there, is if you're going for a second player, you don't want to play a premium with risk involved. You know, you want to pay less because of the risk involved. You know? That's what I'm looking at. That the risk involved in there, you know, is the major factor. So I don't know. Those are a bunch of players to consider, you know, that I know United have at least looked at, and I think that's worth thinking about. And then as to your question about replace, and I think that if you can get, you know, obviously if talking about replacing Casemiro, well, Anderson I think replaces Casemiro for me. I think Anderson replaces. Let's look at some numbers here, though. I wanted to look at some charts, and then we could talk about center backs, because I'm curious to talk about center backs. And look, these are just charts. I understand stats aren't everything, trust me, but like, I'm gonna put up here a bunch of these names. Okay, I'm gonna put up here a bunch of these names that we just talked about. And look at, like, what are their strengths, weaknesses, and what are they doing now? Just on this perspective. Just from the perspective of stats, okay? Who else am I looking? I think Sadiki at Sunderland's been quite good. Gomez at Wolves. I mean, there's a hell of a lot of overlap on these players, you know what I mean? There's a lot of overlap. But let's say we need, you know, physically, okay? Because I would tend to agree. If we just sign Elliot Anderson and Casemiro leaves, we're still going to be lacking in some of the physical, departments. All right. So, I'm just adding names I know United have looked at. I'll add Sangare in a second for fun here. So like these are some of the names. Who else did I want to put on here? Yarmouk. And obviously, look, I'll start eliminating them because obviously once you start adding a ton, the noise just can't see anything over the noise, right? Barrios, Atletico, obviously the best player on the whole list. Elliot Anderson, also one of the top players, one of the best players on the whole list. And Wharton. That's perspective. And then let's add Sangare. And now we have this absolute monstrosity of a list here. So let's take it all down. But look, there's Carlos Baleba. All right. And in general, what we've been looking at is, of course, what the hell? What we've been looking at here is a whole mess of midfielders. And I think part of the question is like, which kind of midfielder are we needing? Which kind of midfielder are we looking for? Where are we trying to go? Why not buy everyone and combine them into one person? No, look, Baleba still shows, interestingly enough, top defending traits, and I still agree with that. But stats aren't everything, okay? Stats aren't everything, all right? And some of the other things that are happening that he's been, lacking this season are really, really low. So I just look at it and go, obviously, if you can get someone like an all-rounder, like an Elliot Anderson, who's grown over the course of 2 seasons quite well, then you're getting defensive possessions won, high dual winning, but you're adding 5 times more, right? You're adding just much, 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 much more to it than that. All right. You're getting a lot of the same strengths, but you're adding a lot more to it. So if you're looking for then say, well, I need a backup though. I need rotation. I need additional players who are going to give me something that we don't have. I just think there's other options. I think if you were to look at someone like Buwadi, if we step outside of England for a second, and you look at Buwadi and you go, well, here's an 18-year-old who's doing what Baleba's doing statistically, but also more, is younger, is available apparently this summer for somewhere in the range of 40 to 60 million. And you go, why not? Why would you not look to something like that instead? Isn't there better value in potential of going for somebody like that? Who also has a high ceiling, who has high potential, who has the ability to be really, really, really good. I think that's important, really. And I know there's questions about, does Elliot Anderson sit and shield the back four? Is that more of an 8? But I don't think we need or even play necessarily with this straight up out and out, back four shielding 6 or something. You know what I mean? Like, we haven't really been doing that. Anyway, if you look at the way that Casemiro and Kobbie are playing and the way that most midfields play these days. Hold on one second. I want to get the City game on. City versus Liverpool. If you look at how we've been playing for the most part, Manchester City versus Liverpool. If you look at how we've been playing for the most part, it's a lot of It's a lot of, Kobbie was oftentimes sitting deeper than Casemiro, and Casemiro was going forward. And, the dynamic there doesn't need to necessarily be one shield or something like that. And especially given that we're playing in a different setup and, but that also, by the way, is why it's important that we nail down who the hell the coach is, because what kind of midfield do they set up? Do they set up with a 3? Do they set up with a 2? Do they set up with other things? We don't know how they set up. So we do need to nail that coach down. But let's assume for a moment that Michael Carrick stays and gets the job. A possibility. Maybe the most likely scenario today that Carrick stays in the job. Let's say that's the case. Well, if we're doing that, then see if Yaranki is in here. I don't think he is, because he's not. They don't have him in this league. If we're doing that, then we don't need a shield. We need a proper sort of partnerships, that are coming together. And I think that becomes the biggest question. Another player we've looked at is Yarmouk as more of like a destroyer type as well. And again, he's high possessions one, has a little bit more in his game statistically this year anyway. But no, it's a serious debate. It's a serious conversation to think about, I know, like, you can look at Baleba and say, well, he would complement Kobbie well, fine. But is he good enough right now to be the starter? I don't think so. Anderson is a lot better. Anderson is the level we should be aiming for. And then you're talking about Baleba's rotation, and that's the problem in terms of price. And I just think there's better options out there in the market at that price for rotation. And certainly United have kept their eye on a ton of midfielders. It's kind of like Adam Wharton, right? If you signed Adam Wharton, he's got to be your starter if you're spending that kind of money on him. Adam Wharton could be the starter as a 6, depending on how we wanted to play. But you're not buying Adam Wharton at 80 million to be a backup. You're not buying Adam Wharton to be, off the bench. So I'm looking at it in the sense of like, we've just got to get better value in building the squad. We've just got to get better value in building the squad there. Because ideally we need like up to 3 midfielders this summer. And we can't spend huge to be backups. We spent huge on Šeško and he doesn't start. It's temporary though. I think he will eventually. But he was intended to start. He was starting. It's kind of an oddity that he's not starting right now. If I can make one hot take, all right, I have one hot take on our last couple of games. I think we would have been better with Šeško starting. Like, we weren't bad, but I think actually we would have been better with Šeško starting and with Mbeumo out wide. But it's hard to not want to drop Ahmad as well. So, but like, I don't think Mbeumo has been particularly great as a striker, or that it even suits him. You know what I mean? In these recent games, like, it was in a very open game against City and Liverpool, yes, but as the games have gotten more compact against Fulham and Spurs, I don't think Mbeumo's been. I'm not saying Mbeumo's been bad. Quite the opposite. I think Mbeumo's been really, really good because he's Mbeumo and he's really, really good. But I think we might have been better with Šeško at striker. And I'm not saying I'd bench Mbeumo. I'd have Mbeumo starting every single game. I don't know that Mbeumo should be at striker right now. It hasn't. It was sort of, I don't know. The spaces didn't suit him that well. He was kind of dropping around all over the place, but he can kind of do anything because he's just that good. So it doesn't really matter. As long as he's on the pitch, I'm happy. As long as he's on the pitch, I'm happy. But I don't know. It's just, I think it's not necessarily, it's like the one thing I would say I don't think we're playing into his strengths right now. But it's hard because it's hard to say, like, who do you drop between Mbeumo, Ahmad, and we're winning. So, but you'd rather until we stop winning, you don't want to change it. And that I agree with too. It's just, I don't know, man. I don't know. We'll see. But I think Šeško will be the long-term starter. You can't drop Almaty's too. I know. It's a conundrum. It's a conundrum. You know? It is a conundrum. It's a serious conundrum as to how you'd want to play. I'd almost be considered to say Mbeumo off the left and you could drop Cunha, but then I don't know about that because Cunha was so good as an impact sub too, you know, that you could drop Cunha and play Mbeumo off the left and Šeško up top and Amad on the right. You could get away with that because you can play Mbeumo like on either side and he's going to be really good. You could do that. That could work as well. So I don't know. Who cares? As long as we're winning, it's all good. But then there's the center back situation here, which is that, like someone mentioned, you know, about Maguire leaving and then having, you know, needing some leaderships, and I think that's a big issue. Maguire is a leader. He is an important player. Here's a bunch of names: Bastoni, Murillo, Lacroix, Scalvini, Schlotterbeck, Lukeba, and Braithwaite. Not saying we're currently pursuing all of those names, but these are a bunch of names United have looked at in recent times in terms of center backs. And there's still potentially a need for that leadership at the back from a center back perspective. If Harry Maguire does leave, we will very likely need to bring in additional center backs. And we will need to very likely bring in someone with some leadership. And then we've had links to Senesi today as well. And that's sort of what I wanted to discuss it and talk about it. Because if Maguire were to leave and we're in Champions League, I think that the player we need to bring in, or a center back we should bring in, needs to be somebody with experience, needs to be someone with some leadership, needs to be somebody that helps us in the not super short term, but in the general short term. And Heaven and Euro can, of course, continue their development into the players that they could potentially be in the future, but we will be somewhat short on options. So those are a bunch of names to think about. If Maguire is to leave, I think some of those would be really, really good options as well coming in. So there's a lot of names to consider. You know, you look at Murillo and you go, okay, Murillo probably not the best. Oh my gosh, they've missed a one-on-one. Murillo probably not the best partner for Lissandro due to the height and things like that you would have and all of that. But he could be a really good partner for someone like Lenny Yoro in the future, or an Aiden Heaven in the future, or something like that, who's got, you know, height and more speed and physical traits and things as well. So that's an interesting one as well. But this is obviously an area that United are looking at, are considering, and are going to have to think about. If Harry Maguire is to leave, and it's likely that, well, not likely that he's going to leave. If Harry Maguire is to leave, and there is certainly a chance of that, if he's not going to be extended, if he's not going to stay, and we're down to Lissandro, De Ligt with back issues, you know, Lenny and Heaven, who are not quite there yet, we do need some extra leadership as center back. And I think that you could lean towards experience and say getting somebody in the 26, 28, 30, you know, in that bracket to provide 4 good years of sometimes starting, sometimes rotation as your other center backs get going could be the right way to look at it. If Maguire was 28, I'd be keeping him for 3 or 4 more years. So it's certainly something to consider. And again, a bunch of names: Bastoni, Murillo, Lacroix, Scalvini, Schlotterbeck, Lukeba, and Braithwaite are names to consider. Not all of the same profile, not all of the same idea, because obviously different decisions are going to have to be made here. What position are you going to sign for? Is it going to be to partner Lissandro? Is it going to be to partner Lenny Yoro? There's a lot of different possibilities in that, but we have to think about it. And those are some of the names that will be considered in this discussion. And we're going to sign a center back if Maguire leaves, almost definitely. Just like we will likely sign 2 midfielders plus another if Ugarte leaves, and maybe another if Bruno leaves, which maybe won't happen. And then there's the wingers as well. So it's certainly to think. It's certainly something. I don't know on that front, obviously, because again, the partnership is, I think, the most important thing. Building complementary profiles for the partnership in the center back position certainly matters as well. Definitely does. Yeah. What do you guys think about that? I mean, do you have do you have preferences for who the hell should come in at center back if Maguire were to leave? If I were to name a preference, I mean, Schlotterbeck's the best center back on that list. Probably not attainable for us. Probably going somewhere else. The best center back on that list, though. Otherwise, I really like Murillo if you were going to pair him with Lenny Yoro and you thought Lenny Yoro was going to be ready to be your guy. Yeah, it's a tricky question. It's a tricky question, and I don't know. Is the recruitment team having doubts about Baleba? Are we likely to make the mistake? It's again, it's a different kind of question when you're talking about Baleba. It's about, I think it comes down to cost. I think it comes down to, the view is that the price has potentially come down and that in summer it'll be worth 70 million. But I think there is consideration over whether he's good value at that or whether United should look elsewhere in terms of options. He's certainly still viewed as a top target. He's certainly still highly admired. But there is a point where, they look at, all right, what are we actually willing to pay for this player? What do we think he's actually worth? And does it matter? And on there, I think the discussions are very much ongoing. Very, very, very much ongoing as to, so do I think there are doubts over the price? Yes. Do I think that, I don't think it's a settled matter on that front. So that's the answer. I always say I think because to a degree, when something isn't settled, I can't say a certain answer. There certainly have been discussions over at what price point is he worth it. In terms of the profile, I believe that they would be looking at him in the 60 to 70 million bracket, and still considering as to whether that's worth it as of this point in time. So it's really more about the price than anything. So yeah. So anyway, that's mostly what I wanted to discuss today is to start looking at this, because clearly some of the things we're seeing are going to affect our plans moving forward. The main points of discussion: can we get Bruno to commit to staying another year prior to the World Cup so that we know and we don't have to replace him? The resurgence of Kobbie, Mainoo, and the look to Anderson or somebody as a top target in the 6 mean that the second signing we should make needs to be better value and price than Baleba. And there's certainly discussions over that. And of course, if we can get Elliot Anderson, but he is our top target. And then if Maguire leaves and we don't keep him, what is the right type of center back? And there's so many names out there for midfield and center back. These are some of them that we've discussed today and some of the questions that we'll have to answer in the coming months. Okay. So that was it. That was what I wanted to discuss today. But otherwise, enjoy the game. I'm going to get on with the rest of my day. Hopefully, a draw or Liverpool lose so that we're staying well clear in these Champions League positions. Mainoo contract update. I think that's going to drag a little, because I think for both parties, they're going to want to see where they stand by the end of the season or closer to the end of the season. To leverage their positions best, frankly. So I think it has potential to drag a little. Not that it isn't wanted, but I think it'll take a little bit. Obviously, some of you are going to watch the Super Bowl later and all of that. So enjoy if you're doing that. Enjoy your Sunday. Enjoy the game. And I will catch you all later. All right. Have a good one, everybody. Goodbye. make sure to smash a like on the video on the way out. Okay, see you later.